So today I'll be coloring this Corgi Fairy from my book, and the first color I'm using here is called Goldenrod, and it's actually a lovely color for a Welsh Corgi. They're very golden yellowy brown colored, and Goldenrod's really the perfect color for that. And I'm going to layer another color on top of this, and I'll demonstrate in this little section how I go about doing that. The color I'm going to layer is a warmer brown. It's actually called pumpkin orange, but it's more of a brown than it is an orange. And I'm going to accent the shadows with this warm brown. And it's going to give the fur quite a lot of depth. And of course the underdrawing, the pen and ink line will still show through this. And here I'm starting with adding some yellow to the Black-Eyed Susans. And I like to start with warm colors first when I do a drawing. And this is true in all the pictures that I do, the illustrations I do, I often will start with the warm tones. So here I am coloring the yellow daisy, and I'll switch to an orange. It's pure orange, and add some warm accents in the middle of these. Actually, the Black-Eyed Susans are not daisies. They've got that warm orange center. Adding a little burnt, I think it's burnt umber or dark umber to the centers, dark brown center. And then finding another spot to add some yellow, and I decide to make the saddle pad a yellow color. So it sort of ties in. Often you want to, when you're using one color, find different spots in the illustration that you can use that same color. And it helps create a unified picture to do things, to use colors in different places throughout the picture, not necessarily just in one spot. So I'm going to make the mushroom caps a nice orange base. And one of the properties of Verithin that I love is how smoothly they go on. You can really, you really don't need to use them sharply. In fact, when they get worn to a soft point, they go on beautifully smoothly, and you can blend them much easier, I find, than traditional Prismacolors, which tend to be a little touchy, and if you bear down too hard, they break very easily. Whereas the Verithins take a lot more punishment. They're harder than the traditional soft Prismacolors. So you see how easily I've been able to blend this mushroom cap so that there's a little more dark and warm at the bottom to show almost the effect of light coming from the top of those mushroom caps. So again, finding another spot to put some orange, and I decided to make her orange, her outfit, part of her outfit orange. And her shoes. And keeping in the warm theme, decided to make the saddle, part of the saddle, nice and bright red. And why not have the reins of the Corgi Red also. Matching saddle and bridle. Now, of course, this is just one way to draw this. You certainly, of course, can choose a completely different color scheme for this, but I thought I'd show you one way that I might color it. So again, taking that same color and finding different spots to use it. So I'm using it very lightly, and it's actually this very quite red pencil is making a very nice pink. So I'm going to have a nice gradated look to the wings, and the tips of them will be a deeper color, and I'm sort of shading it in so that it subtly gets lighter and lighter. And then later I'm going to add another color to the base of the wing and work it back in the other direction. So here I'm taking the taking that color again, the pink, sort of echoing the wing color, going into the lady slipper, and then with a darker or a heavier feel to the pencil, adding accents. One nice way to add accents is to go right over the black, any black lines, and especially over the edge of an image, and it will make it look quite rounded. So I thought I'd do a simple light brown for the saddle and the girth, so that it doesn't stand out as being too bright. And now I'm adding that same brown as a base to the tree trunk, stump, log, that's the word, to the log. So you don't necessarily need to use bright colors absolutely everywhere. In fact, sometimes it's quite good to have some areas that are less bright, and it makes the brighter areas stand out more. I'm coloring the end of the log with the lighter brown. Actually, I think I might have gone back and used, let's see, I think this might be the pumpkin orange again, which really is a warm brown. It's almost like a burnt sienna. And taking that same color, going over some of the leaves, the fallen leaves that are on the moss, which would be, they would be dead leaves at this point because they're curled up and just have fallen from trees. So it would be a brown color. And then adding some of that color back in to the log. So you see how each color that I use, I'm putting in various places in the coloring, and again, this really does help to unify the whole picture. And her hair would look quite nice, I think, this pumpkin orange too, which really makes a nice auburny redhead. So this fairy's face is quite small. Um, so she will be quite simple just to color with a base coat of light peach, which is basically the only flesh tone in this set of pencils. So I'll make her a pale little fairy and then add a little shadow with this warmer color again, using the pumpkin orange. And people tend to look best when the shadow side of their face is in warm tones. Add a little red to her smile. There she is. What's great about the Prismacolors is that you can really use a light touch and they go on very smoothly. So you really have quite a good range of values that you can use for each color. So now I'll do the Trillium down here, using just a couple of colors. The base color I'm using Magenta, which is a very strong red. Starting light, starting an even light coat, and then deepening it as I go. So most people would consider this drawing a halftone, even though all the lines are actually black lines. They are, many of them are shading lines. So those shading lines do come through the coloring. And for a realistic picture, I think this is quite helpful sometimes. Some of the pictures in my book, The World of Fairies, have a lot of shading, and some of them are only outlines. So there is a mix of both types of pictures in my coloring book. Something for everyone. So there you have it. And I went ahead and filled in the little sandy area behind the flowers with another brown. I used Terra Cotta for this with a very light touch at first, and now I'm bearing down and accenting what would kind of be the shadow under the moss to give it a little more depth. Coloring the little mouse, he could be brown. So using that same color in different spots. And going back to the red, but creating, using it as pink. So with a very light touch, it becomes a nice pink for his feet and his tail. And that's a Vermillion, I believe. So now let's tackle green. For the moss, I decided to use the brightest green in the box, which is called True Green. It's quite brilliant, but I'm not going to just use this green straight. Moss is can be very almost tennis ball or green, which is sort of a very yellowy green. So I'm going to make the moss a yellowy green, and I don't have that in the box, so I'm going to layer another color on top of this. I'm going to layer yellow on top. I think this might be it's Canary Yellow, I believe. Any yellow will do, but warm or cool yellow. So putting a few more accents in, getting it smooth, and then finishing up with the yellow. And I'll stop and take a minute and complete the rest of the moss, and then I'll tackle the other leaves, making each of them a different color green. Each type of flower, I'll choose a different color green. So here's the moss. And it's okay if it's a little uneven. In fact, I think it gives it more character if it isn't completely identical everywhere. So I'm using the True Green again for the violet leaves. You know, and one might choose a different color green for that. I just, made the decision to choose that one. Now for the trillium, I'm choosing an apple green, which is slightly different than the other ones I've used, just to make this plant stand out. When there's so much green in a picture, so much foliage, this is a really good way of making it a little more interesting. And for the lady slipper, I'm choosing a very different green, which is an olive green. So that's a much more muted green. Putting accents and shading this half of the leaf as if it's a little more in shadow, leaving the other part slightly lighter. So leaves are fun to play with. There's so many different ways to approach rendering a leaf. All right, so this little Solomon seal plant, I thought it might be fun to use another color yellow on top of the green, of the apple green. And this is actually I'm using the Goldenrod again to just give that a really yellowy leaf, different color leaf. All right, so the leaves are done. Fast forward. And now we're going to switch to the rest of the flowers, making the violets violet. And this is Parma Violet. And I thought I'd make the Solomon seal flowers this purple color too. Although in reality, I believe they are white, so that's not as interesting. So, artistic license. And I'm accenting them with Dahlia Purple, which is a deeper, warmer purple. and giving them little accents. Same with over here. And I'm working pretty quickly. This is a lot of this is not as careful as I would be if I were doing an actual illustration, but hopefully you'll get the idea. So again, bringing that color in another place in the picture. So I thought I'd make her neck piece there, the purple, and have the wings go from pink into purple. And then they sort of blend right into her neck piece there. And why not make her pants the purple too? And giving it a little more accent with that Dahlia Purple again. So again, bringing the colors into the same color into different places in the picture. Okay. And these little feathers, perhaps just give them stripes. So I want them to stand out, and they look not quite nice light. So you want some areas to stand out against darker areas. Now I suggest, do leave some things white in a coloring, but if you want to add a shadow, I would suggest using a nice blue, not gray, for a shadow of white. So this blue that I'm using is Cerulean Blue. Very nice light blue, which makes a good shadow of white. So that's one way to color my Corgi Fairy Steed, using about 20 very thin colored pencils. And you can find them really inexpensively on Amazon, under $20.